Hello everybody, Steve Cunningham here and welcome to Cooking on the Weekend. Got a little story about the perfect plan that went wrong and the end result was something truly out of this world. Now if you want to learn how I turned multiple fails into a great success, stick around and I'll tell you how. The original plan was to teach you how to do a teriyaki pork loin to be cooked in the pizza oven. Well, this never made it into the pizza oven, but it definitely found a great home in the air fryer. So I start off with some thin sliced pork loin, a light dusting of baking soda, and then I just mix it all up to get that evenly coated, and then let it sit for 15 minutes. This technique does two awesome things. It helps really tough cuts of meat become super tender, but it also helps them to absorb more marinade. I've done back-to-back tests with and without baking soda, and the meat treated with baking soda absorbed literally 3 times more marinade. Next step, you want to put all that pork loin into a big bowl of water, thoroughly mix it around, and remove some of that excess baking soda. It's already done its magic. That meat is going to be super tender, and we don't need any extra sodium. There's going to be plenty of that in the marinade. And speaking of marinades, I started off with equal parts of ginger paste and garlic paste. I intended to brown it with a tablespoon of oil and put in too much, and I decided to just go with it. In my original plan, I intended to use my homemade teriyaki marinade with honey. And here's where I had to pivot again. I barely had any of my homemade teriyaki marinade left and had to add some store-bought to the mix. But the pivoting didn't end there. Without even thinking about it, I forgot about using the honey and went ahead and added in the brown sugar. Well, I had a plan that I thought was really good in the beginning. Along the way, nearly every step changed. I mentioned earlier in the video that meat tenderized with baking soda absorbs more marinade. I want you to pay attention to how much marinade I had there, and in a moment I'm going to add all of that to the pork loin. After adding in all the marinade, I went ahead and just gave it a good mix, and then I put it in the refrigerator and let it marinate for 4 hours. To illustrate how effective this technique is for absorbing marinade, I put a colander on top of a pot, added all of the mix in, and then I let it sit there for 20 minutes so you can see this. Have you ever seen a tough cut of meat absorb that much marinade in just 4 hours? It's crazy. I don't understand the science behind this, but I love the results. It's at about this point where pretty much all of the original plans just start falling to the wayside. I was still planning to cook it in the pizza oven. I was planning to cook it on cast iron. I was planning to cook it that evening. In the end, none of that happened. And I'm so glad that plan completely failed because I ended up creating the best pork loin I've ever made in my life. After letting it marinate overnight, I did a little test the next morning in my go-to cookware, the cast iron. Things didn't go quite as I expected. Normally when I'm using this technique, I'm cooking on a griddle top. I was concerned that if I did this in the pizza oven and I couldn't work as fast, I might need to do it in a different way. I drew from past experience and thought about the ways in which I dry chicken wings to help make them more crispy. So I used the same technique and put all that pork on top of a cooling rack, put it in the fridge, and I let it dry out for about 24 hours. I intended to cook this in the pizza oven right after work, but the day went long, I was super tired. I just wanted to cook something awesome and call it a day. So I decided to do experiment number 2 in the cast iron. Threw in some oil, got it nice and hot, and within seconds I could tell there was burning happening at the bottom of the pot. So I stopped. Pulled out the meat because I realized I needed to do this another way. Past experience drew me back to those chicken wings again. I put them on a pizza screen and then I elevate them to get max airflow. I decided to use the same technique to cook this pork loin. I cooked them at 400 degrees, but I have absolutely no idea how long I cooked them for. I wasn't planning to use this for the video, but it turned out so well, I had to take a picture. I didn't have time to make rice, so I just cooked up some ramen. One thing I realized was the pork that got a little bit of extra cook was like 10 times better than the rest. The rest was amazing, but that was insane. So I wanted to cook it just a little bit longer and then ran into another problem. All of a sudden my air fryer quit working on me. Didn't figure out what the problem was till the next day, but it's all good, so I'm ready to give this one more try. Alrighty, it's time for take 3. I'll be serving this with grilled onions and peppers on a bed of rice. Let's fast forward and see how things turned out. For the rice, I added just a little bit of red food coloring. I wanted to make this dish pop. I do this from time to time, and I feel that extra bit of color just makes the dishes look fantastic. Next up, I put all the cooked rice on top of a tray to let it cool down just a little bit. If you want to serve this with fried rice, just leave it on that tray in the refrigerator overnight. This also works great for rice that's going to be cooked on the griddle top. Alrighty, it's time to show you the method that actually worked. And I'm just gotta tell you, this is awesome. So I start with a little tray to elevate a pizza screen. I'm gonna put a little bit of spray oil on that pizza screen and then start adding the pork. I had to do this in 2 batches, and then I moved on to cooking the vegetables and warming up the rice that I cooked the night before. I wanted to get a bit of char on the veg, but I didn't want to smoke up my house. It's 25 degrees outside and I didn't want to have to open windows. So I used a creme brulee torch to get the char I needed. After that, I added my slightly dried rice that I cooked the night before into my Lodge cast iron wok. I wasn't looking to make fried rice. That's an art form in itself. I was just warming up the rice that I made the night before. I cannot emphasize enough how awesome baking soda is for helping absorb more marinade. I've watched a ton of videos where people talk about it as a great tenderizer, but none that talk about its ability to help more marinade get pulled into that protein. This allows you to put a concentrated version of that flavor that would normally be in a sauce on top of a deep fried piece of chicken or pork or beef and put it right into the meat itself. And then the added bonus, you get that grilled flavor on the outside. This technique is absolutely awesome. I definitely recommend giving it a try. Thank you so much for swinging by, and please hit that subscribe button. Y'all have a fantastic day.